Hello, I'm Brent Pillsbury, and this is my friend and colleague Ron Archer. Welcome to another episode of Teacher to Teacher Training.
Today we're going to talk about successful lesson planning, technology, variety, and changing lessons on the fly. What if you get really good at doing the trifold board and so all you ever assign is trifold boards? No variety, right? Tell me about how variety influences lesson planning and how that's even connected to the time of the year or the period of the day. We're high school teachers, you know that.
I think about my student teaching experience. I went to UC Santa Barbara, and I had such a wonderful master teacher, and he was so positive with me and encouraged me every day. But I could not get out of the rut of doing some sort of, this was in the day of overheads, where I would have an overhead, and I would go through the overhead, and I'd be like, yep, I taught it, there you go. And it just didn't give the students a lot of chance to get involved in the curriculum or within the material itself. And so I just felt stuck. And I know a lot of the student teachers I've had in the past, they would just want to teach using PowerPoint because they don't know any other method to teach. And so variety is going to make your life so much better. Even if you fail, that you're willing to try something new and different. And I tell my students, it's like, I try new stuff all the time, even to this day. You know, even at the 22-year mark, I still try stuff and it still fails miserably, but I'm willing to change it throughout the day. So if I'm teaching world history 4 different times throughout the day, like by the end of the day, that history lesson is going to be completely different than when it started because what I wrote down on paper may not be what actually takes place. You know, you could have a sick kid, you know, someone throws up, the kids just are antsy, something in the news happens, you know, and so you just want to make sure that you're willing to change throughout the day. So I agree, variety is going to be something that saves you. And I like to mix it up a lot in my classroom by doing different things.
All right, now let's tell you how not to provide variety. Don't ever provide variety by using technology alone, okay? Oh, I will do something. We can use some technology. Do not use technology for the sake of technology alone or for variety. Technology has to be used very carefully and very deliberately, okay? So variety is not saying, what video can I show? What can they look up on their laptops? That's not curricular variety, that's just poor planning, all right? So make sure that's the case. Also, when you're talking about variety, you're talking about how the lesson is created even how did you plan it differently. If you have a lesson plan that has little chunks to put in it, direct instruction, practice, something you learned, all those are great things, but what about starting out from a different spot? Well, don't they have to have direct instruction from the beginning? No. What about content that kids discover? So then they discover the content, then they turn around and teach the class. Well, that's ridiculous. They'll get it all wrong. If you plan it carefully, they'll get exactly what they need to get, and then they'll have the ability to present it. Now let's talk about something that's not a presentation. Okay, we've been talking about lesson plans in terms of products and presentation. That's a good idea. But what about good old straight up direct instruction when you have to just say, kids, I have to tell you about this first. In math, we have a lot of that, and I get it. You can do a lot of, based on everything we've learned before, what do you suppose this is? And kids can eventually, it's common these days in math to do a lot of like coming in the back door of something, using all the things you've learned to discover something new, and a traditional math instruction would be like, okay, here's something new. Let me show you how to do it. And I get there's a tremendous benefit to kids in math to have them discover the new concept based on the old ones. But there will come times, mostly because of time constraints, where you say, we don't have enough time to discover the Pythagorean theorem today. How about if I just tell you what it is and how it works, okay? So when it comes to variety, you want to keep in mind some things not to do. Now, speaking of not to do, let's talk about failure just for a second in lesson planning. Would you agree with the statement that actually, even though from a kid's point of view, a lesson was a huge failure, no lesson that goes wrong is ever a failure? Agree or disagree?
I agree.
Tell me why.
Because you don't know if that lesson's impacted other kids. I mean, what if the one kid that says a failure, I didn't like it, you know, if one kid's not down with what you're doing, there's maybe a kid out there who's really enjoying the lesson, and nowadays with all the different things you're supposed to be teaching, whether it's writing and reading and primary source documents and, having all your stuff together so that these kids know what's going on. Plus you're dealing with all the distractions. Cell phone is a little bit of a distraction.
What?
It's difficult to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. So,
which brings us to the content of your content of managing a class while delivering a lesson. We'll make sure we talk about that.
So I like the idea that there's nothing, if you think you failed, there's someone out there that thinks you've done a good job. And it's that quiet person sitting in the corner that's not saying anything and you don't know what they're thinking about. So you can't beat yourself up. That's over. Move on to the next class, next day, and retool, and just know that you maybe don't want to feel like that when you do it again.
Okay, so I have a question for you about lesson planning. And it's a trick question. So think carefully.
Okay, I'm ready.
When you're planning a lesson and the lesson has been delivered,
yes,
and the kids didn't like it, but you did,
yes,
or you thought it went great and the kids didn't, okay, you have this dilemma. So here's what I want you to know, and here's the trick question. What's more important, that the teacher felt like the lesson was delivered well, or that the kids felt like the lesson was delivered well? Trick question.
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
And I think every teacher is gonna handle that a little bit differently. But I think you've got to think, what are your small victories going to be? What is the one thing that you're going to come out of the lesson with that you're going to celebrate? Like whether it's you got the attention of that one student, or that your technology worked for the first time, or that you didn't have any misspellings in your PowerPoint, or that the kids were engaged in the discussion at the end. There's got to be something that you can hang your hat on. I think there's something positive. If you're trying your best to teach that lesson, whatever it is, even if it's a worksheet, that you can rest your hat on that one piece of, that victory that.
So no lesson is a complete failure, but you didn't tell me whether you thought it was more important for the teacher to feel good or the kids to feel good. It sounded to me like you wanted the teacher to feel good.
Well, I think it's kind of both. So I think it could be an observable victory where the students have done something that you've observed that you can celebrate because you've allowed this lesson to take place. And then on your side as well, there's something positive that could have happened as well. So it could go either way. I think it can go either way. There could be positives for the students and positives for the teacher.
All right, so ideally, both the student feels good and the teacher feels good. If you can see a little bit of both and realize that no lesson is ever a complete failure,
right,
you're good.
Thanks for joining us.
We have a lot more to say about lesson planning, and we'll hope you'll check out the episodes on that topic and many others.